The Red River Farm Network is excited to be celebrating women's role in Agricult-HER. Agricult-HER is a program made possible by the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council, among other sponsors, and we are in the office today. Rachel Arneson is joining us. Rachel, we've had the chance to talk to you before, and it's always a pleasure to get field updates from you throughout the growing season, and also a recent award and those types of things. Give us the background of your history in agriculture, just to get us started.
Sure. Yeah. Pleasure to speak with you again too, Whitney. So I'm a 5th generation farmer. And so really, if you want to get technical, I guess my history starts about, 140 years ago, when my great-great-grandfather moved into the area. But I went to college and earned a bachelor's degree in English literature and writing, and then a master's degree in anthropology before I ended up returning to the farm in 2011, 2012. And so not the most direct route. I did grow up on the farm, obviously, as a 5th generation. My dad has been farming and just retired this winter. But so I've been farming with him since 2012, managing his acres as well as farming some of my own. And it's not the most traditional route, but I'm very proud of my heritage in agriculture, and so I'm happy that so far so good, and I'm excited to see what this next year brings now that the training wheels are entirely off. Yeah.
And so was that the plan? Definitely nothing related to agriculture necessarily as an education, as a degree. Was coming back to the farm part of your plan at all?
I guess I always expected that I'd be involved in the farm to some degree as like a future landlord, and something along those lines. But my dad never, both my parents, not just my dad, but my parents never wanted to pressure myself or my brother to come back and farm, because my dad especially knows how challenging it is. There are good years, but there are also some really, really challenging years, and you really have to want to be in agriculture and farm in order to survive it, or at least that's one piece of that puzzle. So there was no expectation. I'd come back and help at harvest time in college, and after college, every so often. But really, even in those instances, it wasn't my dad asking, "Hey, can you come back and help?" Mm-hmm. I was just interested, and I guess the farm was calling me back the whole time.
So I've known you for several years now, and every time I get the chance to talk to you or see you out and about in the community, one thing is very evident: your passion for farming and agriculture, and you bring that to a lot of different things. So you work on, or are part of the rescue squad here in Halstad. You're involved in different farming organizations. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about those organizations and your different community involvement.
Yes. Well, I mean, I could quote a bunch of, sort of throwaway lines about, ask a busy person to do, to get something done, even though they have so much on their plate, they're the ones to ask. And I think that kind of follows through. It's in a small community. I think it's easy to have volunteer fatigue, because the same people are in those leadership positions. So I've found that it's flattering to be invited into these organizations and groups, but I have had to be selective in recent years, especially after having my daughter, and protecting my time. But I mean, I am passionate. I mean, it's the entire community that's supporting my farm and what I do. Right down to like the grocery store in town. Sometimes we haven't had a grocery store. There have been some years where we've gone without one right in town, and it's just you forget what a privilege and a luxury that is to have something like that actually supporting you and feeding you. And I mean, that's a whole nother topic, I guess, on
rural vitality, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're producing food, but it's hard for us to get food, sort of thing. But so I do serve on the rescue squad and in other commodity group organizations as I have time.
So tell us a little bit about the farm itself. What do you grow? What are the things that you focus on every year in the field?
I raise sugar beets, wheat, soybeans, and sometimes corn, depending on the markets and if I need it for rotation. And I guess this year I am planning on putting some corn in. It looks like it's going to be an early spring, and the markets don't really look favorable for anything. So it's like, well, why not put some risk management in there and grow a different commodity? So, yeah.
Okay, so you're involved in a lot of different organizations. I know you've served on the Promotion and Education Committee for Farm Bureau. You also I've seen you on a panel at the Sugar Beet Growers meeting as well. So
yes.
You've got a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Why is it important to you to be involved and have a voice in those places?
Well, just in a general sense, not everyone is comfortable stepping up and entering leadership roles. Not everybody feasibly can. I mean, I'm barely able to. I mean, it is a time commitment. It pulls you away from the farm and from family in order to be involved in these other organizations. But I value them in that it's a great learning opportunity and experience for me. It's building my knowledge and network with other farmers in the area or across the state or across the country, which is really cool. Just to know that, I'm not the only one dabbling in these same challenges. But then it also, I feel a responsibility that I am comfortable in those situations to help advocate for my fellow farmers in those positions at the state capitol. I had the privilege of going with the Sugar Beet Growers Association last summer to DC and speaking with some legislators there. So I think it's important because even though I know where our food comes from, and a lot of people in my network and my friends and family know where food comes from, a lot of people who are making decisions that impact our food and farming don't have that intimate knowledge. So it's important to continue educating at every level.
And now you mentioned the network that you've built through your involvement in all these different things and showing up to these meetings and opportunities. Who are some of the people that you kind of look to as role models or look up to as mentors, or just who have inspired you throughout the years here on the farm or in your organizational involvement?
I could list a lot of people. I think that that's so important, and maybe that's the message of this interview is I have the privilege now. Coming back in 2012, I was surprised at how many people were excited to have me back in the community when I made the decision to come back and encourage me. And I wasn't exactly expecting that, because I figured, well, everyone was sort of waiting for me and my brother to decide not to come back, so then maybe they could farm my dad's acres. There's some territorial stuff that comes with farming. But surprisingly, everyone that I encountered, at least outwardly to me, were very, very welcoming. And now, having been back for this long and seeing other people younger than myself come back, I understand it now. Like, I'm encouraged that there are more of us. And so I encourage everybody to be that mentor to others. It's almost, I mean, it's one thing for my own family to be encouraging and see leadership qualities and my management abilities, but for a farming neighbor to come alongside and encourage me and say, oh, you should really get more involved in this organization, it would be really, educational, or, you have a great voice for agriculture. When outsiders come in and share those notes of encouragement, it really means the world. So, I mean, so some of those people, I mean, Rod Olson, Peter Steen, there are local neighbors. I would consider them local neighbors, have been super encouraging ever since I first came back to the farm. And then people within those other leadership roles that serve on like the board of American Crystal Sugar, or have in the past, and or on like the executive staff. I'm thinking of like Lisa Borgen and Cindy Polskamp, who served on the board of directors. Those are just strong women who have encouraged me along in my journey.
So for young farmers and ranchers, young women who are maybe a little bit intimidating by showing up to some of these meetings and things like that, or just young farmers in general, what's some advice that you would give them as they get these opportunities to show up to things, or maybe they're not hearing the opportunities? What would you tell them to encourage them? I would say that first and foremost, show up. You don't have to speak up at meetings or at these other opportunities. I went to plenty of meetings. I still attend plenty of meetings. I mean, there's just so much to absorb. I think the best advice I can give is always be hungry to learn more, whether it's about agriculture, about the practices on your farm, and maybe considering other methods, or learning more about government policy, or just learning about what your neighbor is doing on their farm. I mean, there are just so many opportunities to just build your own knowledge and education before you start contributing to the table, like a boardroom table, for example. And it might be intimidating to ask questions at first. I probably reserved initially a lot of my questions for my dad, or for some of those mentors that I mentioned earlier, privately, like after the meetings, to just learn more. And the more I asked questions and became more comfortable on like what I was asking, the more that they encouraged me to even just ask those questions in that public setting during those meetings. And the more that I've gained my base knowledge, the more confident I felt that, if I have this question, half a dozen other people at least have the same question, and they're just too nervous to ask it. So first and foremost, just show up and absorb what you can. So, as you've mentioned, you have your daughter and you are farming and all of that kind of stuff. What are some of the challenges or things that you really concentrate on balancing with all of that as you go through life, go through farming, go through these meetings and whatnot? I feel like that's something, you mentioned volunteer fatigue. I feel like a lot of the women that we've been talking to throughout the month so far, all of them can probably relate to that. How do you deal with it yourself?
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask for that bit of advice. Maybe
it's a work in progress.
I think it's a work in progress, honestly, for all of us. It is challenging. More often than not, the primary responsibilities of childcare do fall on women. And, right or wrong, but I mean, we want to be involved in our kids' lives. So I don't think that's wrong either. Not to say that the men involved don't want to be involved in their kids' lives. It's just, I do, as an anthropologist, I can confirm that there is some biology related to some of that. But so I don't know. I heard a woman say that the work-life balance is a joke, and I'm starting to that's probably not the most optimistic message that you want to hear, but really I think the message is you do the best that you can in the moment. Whatever's right for your family, whatever's right for my family, you take it as it comes, and it's completely fine. The world will continue to revolve if you have to step back from the table. It's all going to work out. I think family foremost is important, but I also do value being a role model for my own daughter and showing her how she can have the same voice that I do and have, whatever career she should choose, but that she can be empowered in those career choices as well.
All right. So coming back to the farm after getting your degrees and that sort of thing, or even just growing up in agriculture, are there any moments that stick out to you of like, okay, this is why I love this, or this is why maybe I'm really irritated today, or, oh, that was embarrassing? I mean, what are some of those stories in agriculture that just kind of, paint a picture of your experience?
I don't know why this story comes to mind, Whitney, but this was fairly early on in my return to the farm. I had not driven semi-truck in my early years. I didn't learn how to drive a semi until after I came back fully. And during beet harvest one year, and it must have been during pre-pile. It didn't feel like the panic of the main campaign from memory, but I remember pulling into the midway piler, and I had been struggling for a couple loads. There was like a hydraulic leak of some kind on the truck, and I pull into the piler sort of just at the very last minute of when they were kind of closing it down for that day of pre-pile. And I mean, I'm covered in hydraulic fluid, and I'm just dirty and panicked and stressed because I've been rushing trying to get this load to the piler. And I turned to go to a piler, didn't pay attention to the fact that they were closing that one down. And the foreman comes up, and he has me roll down my window, and I start almost crying. As I'm trying to explain, like, oh, I've been rushing and all that. And all he was trying to tell me to do was to go to the other piler. But rather than do that, he got the piler started up again just for me to dump that load. And I didn't realize any of that. I mean, hindsight is 2020. But anyway, I don't think that the grounds crew is very happy with me. But I think that there's just a level of compassion that comes with, I mean, obviously outsiders and mentors sharing their time and compassion with me, but also, I try to translate that same, I guess, I don't know exactly, I can't quite capture the word that I want to use, but that same compassion, I guess, to my own employees when they're maybe having a rough day, because we all do have those days from time to time. So yeah, Yeah. It takes a village.
It takes a village and compassion.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Any final thoughts on your experience in agriculture, your kind of general feeling towards the industry as a whole before we sign off here?
Well, if I may, I'd actually like to turn this around on you, Whitney. I don't know if anybody's done this for you, but
No.
you know, you're so comfortable, the one asking questions. But I mean, you've been a farm reporter for quite a few years now. What is it about maybe even just this specific project with the agriculture? Like what excites you about this, or what inspires you about all these interviews that you're conducting?
Oh boy. Okay, so the thought that popped into my head, and this kind of gave me chills. So I lost my mom at 13. And one of the things I've kind of learned over the years is you can either let it hold you back or empower you. Mm-hmm. And when my mom passed away, she left me with a lot of guardian angels. Strong, extremely strong role models to, you know, kind of watch do their thing. And some of them I don't think she put in my life until later on. And in this role, I've had an opportunity to get to know, well, as a farm broadcaster, you know, even earlier jobs, I've gotten to know you. I've gotten to know, I mean, Don brought Agricult-HER to a staff meeting, and he was like, what do you think we could do for this project? And we rattled off names that there's no way we could have gotten to all of it in a month. I mean, we could do this probably all year. And it was just so exciting to get to bring some of my friends in to highlight how awesome they are. And really, that was, and the other thing that I have found that's really cool in doing all of these interviews is you mentioned other really strong women in agriculture, and they were on our list. I mean, it's not necessarily that we've covered them this year, but eventually they're going to be getting a phone call. And there's so many women that are worthy of that phone call and worthy of telling their story. And I just love the fact that, you know, when we ask everybody who their role models are, we're getting answers that are other women that we're talking to. And that's just so cool to me to see that interconnectedness and how much the agriculture community supports one another. Even, like you said, even when we goof things up, there's grace there. Yeah. And I think that's
grace,
something.
That's a good word. I like that.
I think that's something that women bring. I think that's something that women bring to the profession. That's just really inspiring. That's my thoughts. Now I don't know how to turn this back around. We switched the interview.
Well, I'll just close by saying I don't know when this is going to be posted, but we're recording this on International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day, and thank you for sharing it with me.
And happy International Women's Day to you. And thank you all for joining us here for Agricult-HER, program brought to you by Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council as we celebrate women in agriculture.